All right, so get ready because today we're going deep into something you use every single day, but probably don't think too much about.
Yeah.
The English language. You
Mhm.
know, you guys sent us a quiz about language history,
Ah,
and
yeah.
and it's perfect because it's full of these little clues
hmm
to how English became so, well, weird.
Weird is putting it mildly.
Oh, is it?
But you're absolutely right, though. Those quiz questions are a really great starting point.
Yeah.
So you already know that English descended from Primitive Germanic,
hmm
which is part of the Indo-European family. But knowing the family tree is one thing.
Right.
Understanding how English became the most heterogeneous of all the languages of the world, as your quiz put it, that's where it gets juicy.
Okay, so English is a mix of influences, that's clear.
Yeah.
But, I mean, most languages have borrowed words, right?
Right.
So what makes English stand out?
It's not just the amount of borrowing, it's what was borrowed and when. See, other languages, they tend to borrow for practical reasons, new technologies, concepts they don't have a word for. English, it goes above and beyond.
Ah.
It's like that friend who's always trying on different styles, never quite settling on one look.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about, like, filling the gaps in vocabulary. It's about adopting a whole new aesthetic.
Exactly. Take the Norman Conquest in 1066. Suddenly, English is flooded with all of these French terms, not just for everyday things, but for law, government, even food.
Wow.
If the Normans hadn't invaded, we might be saying justice doer instead of judge,
Oh, wow.
or folk rule instead of parliament, and who knows, maybe we'd be enjoying a nice plate of cow instead of beef for dinner.
Whoa, that's a mind-blowing thought.
Right.
Speaking of mind-blowing, your quiz had a bunch of questions about Old English grammar.
hmm
It had grammatical genders, just like modern German or Spanish, right?
Yep.
But that completely vanished from modern English.
Wow.
How on earth did that happen?
That's one of the big mysteries.
Is it?
Unlike vocabulary changes, which often have clear historical causes, grammatical shifts, they're a lot sneakier.
I see.
They happen gradually, through subtle changes in how people use language over generations.
Well,
It's like trying to track a glacier. You see the massive effect, but the movement itself is almost imperceptible.
and those gradual changes can have huge consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine trying to learn English with genders for every noun.
It would certainly add a layer of complexity.
Right.
And speaking of trying to make sense of English, let's talk about the brave souls who attempted to pin down this ever-evolving beast,
Oh, yeah.
the dictionary makers.
Ah, yes. Your quiz had questions about everyone from Codry to Webster. It's amazing how much the concept of a dictionary itself has changed over time.
Right.
Codry's early attempt was basically just a word list.
hmm
But then you get figures like Dr. Johnson, who wanted to do so much more than just define words.
Johnson, he was ambitious.
He was.
He wasn't content with simply listing words. He wanted to illustrate their usage, capture their nuances, even offer his own opinions on them. It's like he wanted to create linguistic portrait of English society.
It makes you wonder, though, how much of a dictionary is just capturing the language as it is versus shaping it for the future.
Yeah,
Do you think those early dictionary makers influenced how people actually used English?
that's a fantastic question. And it's one that linguists still debate.
They do.
On one hand, a dictionary is meant to be a reflection of current usage,
Mm-hmm.
but the very act of choosing which words to include, how to define them, even which spellings to standardize, it exerts a subtle influence.
I see, yeah.
It's like a gardener tending to a wildflower meadow.
Okay.
They're not creating the flowers,
Right.
but they're certainly shaping the landscape.
And some of those early dictionary makers were, like, real characters, too.
Oh,
Wasn't there some controversy about how certain words were defined? Like how one dictionary defined oats as a grain, which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people.
oh, absolutely. These dictionaries are full of personality, little glimpses into the social and cultural biases of the time. They're not just dry lists of definitions. They're historical documents. They're windows into how people thought about language and the world around them.
And speaking of figures who left their mark on the language, we can't forget the literary giants.
Right.
And the quiz definitely did not forget Shakespeare. Everybody knows he wrote some fantastic plays.
Absolutely.
But I bet most people don't realize how many everyday phrases they use were actually coined by Shakespeare.
It's true. He was a master of language, constantly pushing boundaries and inventing new words.
Mm-hmm.
Like scapegoat, patience on a monument. These phrases have become so deeply embedded in our language that we hardly even think about their origins.
Okay, but he didn't just come up with clever phrases.
Right.
Didn't he actually create entirely new words as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Shakespeare wasn't afraid to experiment with grammar and word formation.
Okay.
He even used prefixes like N and M to create new verbs like encourage and embrace.
Well,
These words have become so commonplace that we take them for granted,
yeah.
but they were Shakespeare's innovations.
Yeah, so he wasn't just a brilliant playwright. He was a linguistic innovator.
Absolutely.
But Shakespeare wasn't the only writer who expanded the expressive power of English.
Yeah.
The quiz also mentioned figures like Milton and Hopkins. What kind of impact did they have on the language? Milton's famous for Paradise Lost, of course. But, it's easy to forget how much his writing shaped, the English language.
Right.
The quiz mentioned pandemonium, which is a pretty epic word.
It is.
But even phrases like confusion, worse confounded, they're so evocative, so Miltonian.
Yeah. He had a knack for capturing those complex ideas in memorable language, didn't he?
He did.
And then you have Hopkins, a poet who was almost obsessed with the uniqueness of things.
Oh, wow.
He coined terms like inscape to describe those distinctive features, those qualities that make something truly itself.
Right.
It's like he was trying to stretch the boundaries of language to capture the essence of being.
It's incredible how much power these writers had, not just to create beautiful literature,
Right.
but to literally shape the way we think and speak.
Absolutely.
They expanded the possibilities of the language itself.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of possibilities, your quiz also touched on the idea of artificial languages like Esperanto.
Yeah.
Such an intriguing concept.
Yeah.
A universal language, free from cultural baggage.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
This quest for a language that could transcend national borders, eliminate all those misunderstandings, and unite humanity.
Wow.
And while Esperanto has its dedicated followers, it never quite achieved the universal adoption its creators envisioned.
I guess there's something about the messy, organic nature of natural languages
Yeah.
that resists those attempts at simplification. It's
Yeah.
like trying to fit a wildflower meadow into a perfectly manicured garden.
Yeah.
It loses some of its magic, don't you think?
I think you're right. There's something about the quirks, the irregularities, the sheer variety of natural languages that make them so captivating.
Right.
Even within a single language like English, we
Yeah.
have this incredible diversity of dialects, accents, regional variations.
It's true.
It's a testament to the creative energy of language users.
Which brings us to one of my favorite quiz questions.
Okay.
The Americanism fall versus the British autumn.
Right.
It's such a simple example, but it highlights how language can diverge even within a relatively short time span.
It's a great illustration of how geography can influence language.
Yeah.
And fall is just the tip of the iceberg. Think about all the unique words and expressions that have emerged in American English, from slang terms to regionalisms to entirely new ways of using grammar. It's like English was transplanted to a new environment and blossomed in these unexpected ways.
And then there's the story behind okay.
Yeah.
The quiz mentioned a theory that it came from all correct,
Oh, yeah.
a humorous misspelling of all correct, popular in the 1830s.
Mm-hmm.
I love that kind of linguistic detective work, uncovering the unexpected origins of everyday words.
It's fascinating, isn't it? You start digging into the history of a word,
Yeah.
and you never know what you're going to find. Slang, misinterpretations, cultural influences, even outright inventions.
Wow.
It's a reminder that language is constantly in flux, shaped by the whims and creativity of the people who use it.
It almost makes you want to start paying more attention to the words you use every day, to look for those hidden stories, those glimpses into the past. Every time I say, okay, now, I'm going to think about those 1830s hipsters with their deliberately misspelled slang.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Language becomes so much richer when we understand its backstory. It's
Right.
like those historical tours where you walk through a familiar city and suddenly see it with new eyes,
Yeah.
recognizing the layers of history embedded in every street corner.
It's like that quote, language is the archive of history.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the past, is it?
Yeah.
Language is also a tool for shaping the future.
Absolutely. Every time we use language, we're participating in this ongoing evolution.
Mm-hmm.
We're choosing words, crafting sentences, contributing to the collective conversation that is English.
Right.
And while we might not all have the impact of a Shakespeare or a Milton, our individual choices still matter.
So what you're saying is even our humble text messages and tweets
Hmm.
are playing a role in shaping the future of English.
Yep.
That's kind of empowering, actually.
It is, and it's a reminder that language is a shared responsibility. We're all caretakers of this incredible inheritance, this intricate web of meaning and expression that connects us to each other and to the past.
Speaking of the past, I can't believe how much ground we've covered already. We've gone from the ancient roots of English to modern-day slang, from the impact of historical events to the power of individual writers.
Yeah.
It's like we've been on a whirlwind tour of the linguistic landscape.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore. The psychology of language, the relationship between language and thought, the challenges of translation. It's a truly endless field of study.
Which is probably why you're still so fascinated by it, right?
Yeah.
What is it about language that keeps you coming back for more?
For me, it's the endless possibilities. Language is constantly evolving, adapting to new technologies, new ways of thinking, new forms of expression. It's a reflection of who we are as humans, our creativity, our ingenuity, our capacity for connection.
It's like a mirror reflecting the human experience back at us.
Hmm.
But it's not just a passive reflection, is it?
Yeah.
It's also a tool for shaping that experience.
Exactly. Language isn't just something we use, it's something that shapes us.
Wow.
It influences how we think, how we perceive the world, how we relate to each other. And as we become more aware of this power, we can start to use it more consciously, more intentionally, to create the kind of world we want to live in.
So we're not just passive recipients of language. We're active participants in its evolution. I like that idea. It means we all have a role to play in shaping the future of English, even if it's just choosing to use a particular word or phrase.
And those choices matter because language has the power to build bridges, to foster understanding, to create positive change. It can also be used to divide, to mislead, to perpetuate harm. So it's up to us to use this powerful tool wisely, ethically, and with a sense of responsibility for its impact on others.
It's like Spider-Man's Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. Maybe he's just talking about language all along.
Maybe.
But speaking of responsibility, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, the internet. I mean, it's no secret that the internet has had a massive impact on language. But is it a good thing, a bad thing, or somewhere in between?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. On one hand, the internet has democratized language in unprecedented ways. It's given a voice to marginalized communities, created new forms of expression, and facilitated communication across geographical barriers.
But it's also brought about, like, a lot of negativity, trolling, hate speech, the spread of misinformation, not to mention the rise of internet slang and abbreviations that some people see as a threat to proper English.
It's a complex issue, and I don't think there's a simple right or wrong answer. Language is always evolving, and the internet is just the latest chapter in that long and winding story. It's up to us as language users to navigate these changes thoughtfully, to embrace the positive aspects while mitigating the negative ones.
So it's less about judging the changes and more about adapting to them.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to use these new tools for good. I like that approach.
Yeah.
But all this talk about the internet in modern English makes me wonder, what about the future?
Yeah.
Where is English headed in the next 50, 100 years? Will it still be the dominant global language? Will it even be recognizable?
Those are fascinating questions. And of course, I don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
But I think it's safe to say that English will continue to evolve and adapt, just as it always has. It's a remarkably resilient and adaptable language, and it's shown an incredible ability to absorb new influences and reinvent itself over time.
But some people worry that English is becoming too fragmented, too diverse.
Yeah.
That we're losing that shared sense of understanding. What do you think about that?
It's true that English is becoming increasingly diverse, with new dialects, accents, and varieties emerging all the time. But I see this diversity as a strength, not a weakness. It reflects the richness and dynamism of the language, its ability to adapt to different cultures and contexts.
So instead of trying to hold on to some idealized vision of, like, pure English, we should embrace this ongoing evolution. Celebrate the different ways people are using the language.
Exactly. Language is a living, breathing entity, and it needs to change and grow to stay relevant. And the beauty of English lies in its ability to embrace this diversity, to incorporate new influences, and to constantly reinvent itself.
It's like a river, constantly flowing, changing course, picking up new sediments along the way. But even as it changes, it remains a river. And speaking of rivers, maybe it's time to bring this deep dive back to shore. We've covered so much ground, from the ancient origins of English to the impact of the internet, from Shakespeare's wordplay to the quest for a universal language.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
And I hope our listeners have enjoyed exploring the fascinating and often surprising world of the English language.
And I think that's a great takeaway from this deep dive. Language isn't just some static thing we learn in school. It's a living, breathing entity that we're all a part of.
Exactly. And as we move forward, it's going to be fascinating to see how all these new influences shape the future of English.
Right.
Will technology lead to more simplification? Will globalization create a more homogenized global English? Or will we see even more diversity, with new dialects and variations emerging all the time?
Those are big questions. I guess only time will tell, but knowing everything we now know about how English got to where it is today,
Yeah.
it seems like betting on its demise might be a bit premature, right?
I think you're right. English has shown an incredible ability to adapt and evolve over centuries. It's weathered invasions, technological revolutions, and countless cultural shifts. I have no doubt it will find a way to navigate the challenges of the 21st century and beyond.
And who knows, maybe in 100 years, someone will be doing a deep dive into the English of the 2020s, marveling at our slang, our internet abbreviations, and the way we integrated technology into our communication.
I would love to hear that deep dive. I bet they'll find it just as fascinating and surprising as we've found this exploration of English history.
Well, I think we've done our part to document the language for future generations. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the ancient roots of English to the impact of the internet, from Shakespeare's wordplay to the quest for a universal language.
It's been a real pleasure to delve into this topic with you, and I hope our listener has come away with a newfound appreciation for the richness, the complexity, and the sheer wonder of the English language.
Absolutely. It's made me realize that language is much more than just a way to communicate. It's a reflection of our history, our culture, and our shared humanity.
And it's a powerful tool for shaping the future. So let's all use it wisely, creatively, and with the sense of responsibility for the impact it can have on others.
Well said. To our listener out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the English language.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep celebrating the amazing world of words.
Happy exploring.